Australian property prices are in the news again, as they always seem to be of late. In February 2019, the latest figures from CoreLogic show that property prices fell a further 0.7% nationally, with Perth and Darwin experiencing the greatest declines, slumping 1.5% and 1.7% respectively. Sydney and Melbourne both fell 1.0%, while Hobart was the only capital where house prices went up by 0.8%. Even places like Brisbane and the regional centres are running out of steam, both falling 0.3%. In terms of annual growth, or lack thereof, Sydney and Melbourne are leading the pack with falls of 10.4% and 9.1% respectively. Perth and Darwin have also suffered significant losses at 6.9% and 5.3% respectively. Hobart is the only state capital to show any signs of a property boom, with a gain of 7.2% over the last year. Personally, I don't want to live in Tasmania, so I find that quite surprising. Taking a look now at median house prices, it can be seen that Sydney and Melbourne are still the most expensive markets at around $789,000 and $629,000 respectively. Canberra comes in next at around $594,000. The other capitals are hovering around the $400,000 to $500,000 mark. Tim Lawless, head of research at CoreLogic, says that house price falls are now extending well beyond the previously booming Sydney and Melbourne markets. He stated, "Every market in Australia is losing steam. We are seeing this downturn becoming quite widespread geographically. I think that's a real indicator that lending conditions are throwing quite a dampening blanket over the market entirely." In addition to tougher lending standards, Mr. Lawless also mentioned some other factors that are potentially hurting the property market. He said, "We've seen a lot of new supply coming into the market from newly constructed housing, especially in the high-rise apartment sector. We've seen a real slowdown in foreign buying activity and, of course, we're also still seeing affordability challenges in markets like Sydney and Melbourne, despite the fact that values have come down in Sydney now by 13% and in Melbourne by nearly 10% since the peak." Mr. Lawless also spoke of the increasing number of properties on the market due to a lack of buyers. Consequently, owners are less likely to want to sell due to the falling market. He said, "We're seeing vendors, understandably, are quite reluctant to be putting their property into the market when selling conditions are quite challenging. Compared to last year, the number of new listings being added to the market is down by nearly 20% across the capital cities. But because properties are taking longer to sell, and we've seen buyer numbers fall by around 15% or so over the past year, it means total inventory levels out there are now very high. So buyers have a lot of stock to choose from. They can negotiate very hard, and they can really take their time." He predicts that in around 2020, prices will start to stabilise, but of course, we all know the result of predictions. They usually fall flat. He said, "Probably somewhere in 2020 we'll start to see the market levelling out. There's a lot of moving parts here, and if we do see interest rates coming down, for example, which seems more likely now than it was a few months ago, we might see a little bit of extra stimulus come into the market. But the big question there is, even if interest rates do come down, how much will we see the lenders passing those rate cuts on, and how much effect will it have on the market?" What are your thoughts on Mr. Lawless's predictions? Will interest rates go down? Will markets level out in 2020? Or is the property market just one big bubble ready to have a giant pin stuck into it? Let me know your thoughts below.